Welcome back, everybody. I'm Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon and The Blackest Heart, both published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today, I am reviewing Winterkill, the third book in C.J. Box's Joe Pickett mystery series. I've become obsessed with this series the last couple weeks. I bought the first book, read it, loved it. It was probably my favorite book this year, and then I just bought the whole rest of the series. In fact, you can see I got the whole rest of the series up there on my top shelf. Now we're reviewing book 3, folks. One of the things I like about this series is the covers. We always review the covers first because you know I love book cover illustration and graphic design. Every one of these CJ Box books has an elegant piece of photography scenery of a nice Wyoming scene. Winterkill, this takes place in the dead of winter in Wyoming, so this is a great shot of some trees in the snow, and then the spine and the back looks fabulous, as do all the books on the shelf. And we'll go back to the shelf because you can see that all the spines of all the books match up just perfectly, and that's what we love as book collectors. We love the spines to look dynamite on our shelves. What's this about? It's the third Joe Pickett book. Came out in 2003. This is the best book about shooting elk by putting Marlboro cigarettes in your 30-06 and firing them out and shooting elk. I swear to God that's what happens in this book. The first CJ Box book was the best book about flesh-eating weasels. Book number 2 was the best book about exploding cows I've ever read. And now book 3 is the best book about loading your 30-06 with Marlboro cigarettes and slaughtering elk with it. Kid you not, folks, I kid you not. This book starts out in December, the last day of the elk hunt. Our main man, Joe Pickett, one of the reasons I love Joe Pickett, he's a game warden. This is the only series I know of about a game warden, and he's up in Wyoming. And if you followed my last 2 reviews of the first 2 books in the series, you know Joe Pickett, he's just an all-around decent guy. I mean, the reason I love Joe Pickett is because I've worked in law enforcement now for 13, 14 years, and I know guys exactly like Joe Pickett. So I can picture this guy in my head. And he's a do-gooder. He wants to do good every time, everywhere. He wants to make the right decisions. But he sometimes is a bit naive. And in the opening prologue, this is where the opening prologue of book 1, his naivete shined through, and he made a lot of mistakes. The prologue of this one, his naivety shines through also. He's out there in the range. It's the last day of the elk hunt, right before a huge winter storm, and he finds a guy out there shooting elk. Not just one elk, because everybody's allowed one. If you got an elk license, you can get one elk. But this guy's shooting the entire herd. I mean, he's dropping elk, just boom, 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 boom. And Joe Pickett's like, oh my gosh. And you know, it can be dangerous because he's out there in the woods by himself with a guy who clearly has no conscience as if he's going to murder all these elk. Who knows if he's going to turn his gun on Joe, right? But Joe that's his job. As a game warden, he's got to put a stop to this. Keep in mind, he's 100 miles away from any backup or help, and he goes out to confront this guy. When he sees who it is, he realizes it's a friend of his. It's actually a friend of his named Lamar Gardner, who is actually the supervisor of the 12 Pines National Forest. And he's like, oh my gosh, what has gone wrong with this guy? This guy's an environmentalist. Why is he out here just blowing away deer left and right, or elk left and right? And, you know, so he confronts the guy. I'll let you figure out the whole Marlboro cigarettes and the rifle bit on your own. But he confronts the guy, and the guy's like, oh my gosh, I I'm either drunk or I'm suffering from a mental illness. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't remember shooting all these elk. Please go easy on me. Joe Pickett's like, I don't know if I believe him. Is he really drunk? Did he really suffer from a mental illness spell? I mean, what is going on? And the guy's pleading, please don't turn me in. I am the supervisor of the National Forest. I'm like a nationally recognized person. You can't arrest me for shooting all these elk. And Joe Pickett's like, well, listen, I got to arrest you. So he cuffs the guy and throws the guy in the pickup truck. Well, Joe Pickett's such a good guy. And this is where things start to spiral out of control. Everything I'm telling you is in the prologue, and it's the setup to the story, so I'm not spoiling anything, okay? But Joe Pickett's such a good guy. He's like, there's like 12 dead elk out here, and the storm's coming, and these elk are going to be lost under the snow, and they'll just go to waste. I need to go skin them and dress them and cut the meat off of them, because he typically, when he comes across scenes like this of poachers and he has to confiscate the dead deer or the dead elk, he typically dresses them and takes the meat and gives it to the prison or gives it to different Indian tribes that need the meat and things like this, or homeless shelters. So he's like, well, I'm not going to let all this meat go to waste. So he takes his time to go get all the meat from the elk and put it in the back of his truck, all the while that this guy is cuffed inside of his truck going, you know, don't arrest me, quiet, and having a nervous breakdown and everything. And so Joe Pickett, but by this time the storm rolls in. They're way up in the mountains. And so now we've got this heavy storm coming. And he's still cutting up the elk, thinking, well, I can get one more elk. And then, as they're driving away, the guy that he's arrested is like, I just need to take a piss before we go. So can you just let me out of the truck? Well, what happens is the dude has somehow slipped his cuffs. And he ends up, as Joe reaches over to do something, the guy ends up taking the cuffs and cuffing Joe Pickett's wrist and the steering wheel, now, and then he flees out of the truck. So now Joe Pickett, in his naivety, like I said, everything he does, he's like Ed Stark. He's like Eddard Stark in Game of Thrones. Like, he just wants to make the right decision and the moral decision all the time. That's why he took the time to cut the meat. He took the time to arrest the guy. He took the time to let the guy out of his cuffs so he could go pee, because he's just a good dude. And then it backfires on him every time and in every prologue. And it's just one of the reasons I love this series, is because Joe Pickett's just such a real guy. And then so this guy flees through the storm. And so now Joe Pickett, he's cuffed to the steering wheel. Well, he can't reach his cuff key, but he can reach a screwdriver, and he unhooks the steering wheel, and now he's chasing this guy through the snow with a handcuff and a steering wheel, and he doesn't have time to uncuff everything, and or maybe he loses his cuff key. I can't remember what happens, but he's chasing, and these are the little details I love that C.J. Box puts in these books, is he's out there chasing this guy through a massive snowstorm in the Wyoming wilderness, and he's got a handcuff around one wrist, dangling a steering wheel, and so he's out there chasing. Well, anyway, what happens is he's chasing this guy. He can tell he's getting closer because the tracks in the snow are getting fresher and fresher and fresher. Well, he could follow the guy right to where he is because it's this huge snowstorm. But anyway, then he comes across the guy. He finds the guy. He finds the poacher, this Lamar Gardner, the supervisor of the 12 Pines National Forest. He finds him. He finally tracks him through the snow, and he finds him, but he's dead. And he's dead, and he's pinned to a pine tree with arrows. Like someone has shot him full of arrows and pinned him to a pine tree. And he's dead. And so Joe Pickett's like, oh gosh, he's dead. So he's gonna mark. He's like, who? And he's like, who shot arrows? And are arrows gonna shoot me? So he does a search of he can't find. He can tell that the people that shot the arrows bolted out of there. And so they're gone. So, but then he's got, well, now I've got to mark this crime scene. But then, and he's like, and then I got to get out of here because the snow's going to cover all this. And then he realizes that the guy's not dead, that he's breathing. So he's like, now I've got to carry him out. Now it's no longer a murder scene. Now I've got to save this guy's life. So he takes him off the tree with the arrows. Like I said, this is all in the program. I'm not spoiling it. This is the setup to the whole mystery. He pulls him off the tree, pulls him off the arrows. He carries him out, but by the time he gets him back to, he puts him in the back of the truck with all of the meat, and by the time he gets to town, the guy's dead. Actually, I think the guy might have died before he gets him to the truck, but that's why he put him with the meat, so his dog could ride up front. In fact, his dog Maxine is with him everywhere he goes, and his dog Maxine plays a huge part in this whole chase and this whole scene and the whole reason he's cuffed to the steering wheel and all that. But anyway, I forgot about that part. There's a dog. But anyway, that is the basis to the plot. Now he's got to figure out who shot the arrows in the guy that was poaching all the deer. And we get a big, great super mystery. I love these books because Joe Pickett is not a Superman. He's not like John Wick and just shooting people in the head left and right. He's not like Dirty Harry, where you know he's just going to win every gun battle. I mean, this guy, Joe Pickett, he's just a regular dude making regular mistakes in his job, you know, and that's why I love that those plots usually start out with an oopsie by Joe Pickett, you know. And then he's got to make right, and he always does the right thing, and he loves his family, and the story is about his family too. He's got these wife and these daughters, and then I'm telling you, the ending of this one was just heart-wrenching. Because it seems like every single time there's a big murder or a murder case, somehow his family gets involved and wrapped up in all of it. And I'm telling you, great ending. I like this one just as much as I like the debut. Open Season, and then Open Season I loved, and then Savage Run I liked too. This one I compare to Open Season as good as the debut. I give it 10 out of 10. Man, I am hooked on this series, and I can't wait to read the other 20 or some odd